welcome back to another video. My name is Jill and today I'm going to be talking about all of the books that I read in November, which actually ended up being 10 books, which is pretty impressive because this video is kind of going up late because I was so busy with school. I had my finals week, but I actually, like, at the beginning of November, I had, like, a ton of projects, and then, like, the middle to end of November, I had, like, nothing, and then the first week of December, I was slammed again. So I was actually able to read, like, a good amount of books in those, like, 2 weeks where I didn't really have a lot of stuff. Yeah, almost every single book that I read was 4 stars, so really a solid reading month. I didn't read anything that was, like, absolutely, like, a 5-star read, at least from what I can remember. But they were all very solid. Like, I didn't read any book that I really didn't like. I'm just gonna go in order of, like, my most favorite to my least favorite, and this is only going to be based on, like, 0.5 stars and stuff like that. But yeah, let's just get into it. Also, I didn't even mention this, I have decorated for Christmas. I hope you like my efforts. I hung a, like, garland thing with Scotch tape. You know, it might fall down. It already has, like, twice. And then I tried to hang it up with, like, packing tape when they're supposed to be hung up with, like, hooks, but, like, there was, like, no way to do that. Yeah, let's just get into probably my favorite book that I read for the month of November, and that is The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue by V.E. Schwab. I tabbed the hell out of this book, and on Goodreads, I did give this a 5-star, but as I'm thinking about it, I think that it is more of a 4.75. It still was absolutely amazing. Like, I did really, really love it, but the ending is the thing that made me, like, subtract a 0.25 stars, but I'll get to that in a minute. So this book is, like, everywhere right now, and probably everyone has heard the elevator summary, but in case you haven't, it's about a girl named Addie LaRue who makes a deal with a devil in order to live forever, but every single person that she comes into contact with forgets her as soon as she's out of their line of sight. And the story kind of goes from there. You follow Addie for like 300 years, and it kind of goes back and forth between the past and the present. I feel like this book is very unexpected. Like, even though that summary is what it's about, I feel like it's about, like, a lot more that I can't really get into unless I kind of get into spoilery territory. One thing that I really loved about this book was how passionate it was about the love for art and creating and artists and all things like that. Like, it was so beautifully done. Really appreciated how much you, like, nerded out about art. Like, that was so great. Also, the quotes in this book were fantastic. Like, I tabbed, like, the hell out of it because there were so many just wonderful quotes. This book kind of gave me similar vibes to Strange the Dreamer by Laini Taylor. Not anything related to the plot, just kind of the whimsical, like, beautiful writing bit. Like, I feel like, I don't know, maybe I just kind of had similar feelings while reading them. Because about two-thirds of the way through this book, this was going to be, like, my favorite book of the entire year. Like, absolutely no competition. But then the ending, which is the reason why I subtracted 0.25 stars, I think the ending in general is just going to be polarizing depending on, like, what kind of reader you are. But for me, I just really was left feeling a little bit confused because I feel like V.E. Schwab had, like, a bunch of different endings she could have picked, and the one she did was my least favorite. And I feel like there's a really sad ending that you could have gone with for this book, and I honestly would have preferred that probably because it would have made me, like, sob. So yeah, the ending, a little bit disappointed, ended up subtracting a 0.25 star, ended up bumping this one down on my favorites list. It'll probably make my favorites list still, but definitely not at the top. But I still really enjoyed it. Like, I think that people are really going to like the ending. It just really wasn't personally for me. I think this book at its core is really about how to live a meaningful life. And I don't know, that message really, like, resonated with me, and I just enjoyed it. Wish the ending was different, but the journey to get to the ending was just immaculate. So the next book I read was one that I really wanted to get to by the end of the year. It's just so good, and I gave it a 4.5 stars, and that is Wicked Fox by Kat Cho. This book was so much fun. This is a Korean mythology inspired, like, urban fantasy story that follows a 18-year-old girl named Gumiho. It follows an 18-year-old girl named Myung, who is a Gumiho, or a 9-tailed fox, and basically she feeds on the life forces of men, but then she actually witnesses a human boy named Jihoon being attacked by another supernatural creature, and she saves him, and then they connect and all kinds of stuff happens. This book is heavily inspired by Korean dramas, which I love. I've watched, like, about, like, 30 of them, and so I think that is why I loved this story so much, because it had all the classic K-drama elements to it, and I was just smiling and laughing throughout, like, this entire story. I understand why people may not like it if they are unfamiliar with Korean dramas. You might still like it. I think if you, like, haven't seen K-dramas, this romance might seem, like, really dramatic or, like, very I don't know what the word is, but like maybe like a little bit cheesy. That's just kind of how like Korean dramas are, and I just feel like this stayed so true to Korean dramas. But for me, loved it. Absolutely fabulous. I'm so excited to read the next book, and I just loved the inclusion of Korean culture. I actually took Korean as my foreign language in college for 2 years, and so I really appreciate seeing the romanized Korean throughout this story. The reason why it's not a full 5 stars is because I do think that it did kind of drag in the middle, and I thought that some things didn't necessarily make sense. Yeah, what a solid book, and it really warmed my heart. It did. Next up, I have a book that I listened to on audio, and that was Every Heart a Doorway by Seanan McGuire. This is the first book in the Wayward Children series, which I have heard so many wonderful things about, like really recently. Like, I know that it's been around for a while, but very recently I've seen lots of people talking about it. These are like very short, like the audiobook was only like 4 hours long, kind of like, I think they're considered YA, but they're kind of more middle grade, but they're kind of like in a genre of their own, to be honest. I think the series in general, I've only read the first one, but I know the series in general follows children who go through different doors to go in different worlds. That's what like everyone kind of says about it. But yeah, this first one is just kind of like setting the scene. We kind of get to meet like a full cast of characters, and then I think all of the books after this focus on like 1 or 2 of the characters that we meet in this book. I really enjoyed it. Like, I gave it a 4.25. Because I feel like this is the case with like all short books for me. Like, I just felt like I wanted more from it. I wanted more development. I felt like things could have been like more fleshed out. And of course, like what Seanan McGuire is doing here is giving very, very short books. Overall, super fun, way darker than I thought. Like, I didn't know this was going to turn into like this thriller type thing. Yeah, I'm very excited to continue on with this series, and it was just such a solid read. So fun, very, very quick audiobook. Alright, next up I have all of my straight 4-star books. I'm going to talk about my first one, which I kind of mentioned in my October wrap-up, but that is Cemetery Boys by Aiden and Thomas. I'm not going to talk about it too much because, again, I think I talked about it a lot in my October wrap-up because I was like almost done with it anyway. But yeah, I really enjoyed this story. It's about a transgender Latinx teenage boy who is in a family of brujos and brujas, which basically means that they are able to see the dead, and brujos help kind of the spirits move on to the afterlife, and brujas help like heal people. But yeah, I really enjoyed the story. I thought it was hilarious. Oh yeah, and also so Yadriel, who is the transgender boy in this book, he ends up accidentally summoning the ghost of the school bad boy. So this book is kind of a romance, but it also kind of has like a thriller murder mystery undertone to it. And I feel like that murder mystery thing got really like buried towards the middle of the book, and it felt like the plot was kind of just like going all over the place. But I still thought it was fantastic. Obviously 4 stars, very high rating. And I'm so excited to see what Aiden Thomas does next. Such a great book to read like around Halloween, or like if you just want kind of like a slight ghost story, kind of spooky kind of book. This is definitely one that I would recommend. Next up, I have a book that I read for my YA literature class. If you've been here for a while, I have read a few for this class, and that is I Am Not Your Perfect Mexican Daughter by Erika Sanchez. And this is actually my favorite book that we read, I think, for this class. I really enjoyed it. It follows a girl named Julia, and her sister has just died. Her family, her mom, really loved her sister named Olga, and her mom considered her sister like absolutely perfect, and Julia in comparison is like not as good. And so Julia kind of has to really grapple with trying to have a relationship with her mother when like they're grieving and like all kinds of emotions are going up. Also, there's kind of like a mystery element to this, to where Julia's trying to figure out what exactly happened to Olga and like what were the circumstances surrounding her death. I really enjoyed Julia as a main character, even though she was like very pessimistic. Like, I understood where that was coming from, and yeah, this one was pretty solid. And also for that same YA class, I also gave this 4 stars, but I do think I enjoyed it a little bit less than I'm Not Your Perfect Mexican Daughter, and that is The Perks of Being a Wallflower by Chbosky. This is a reread for me, and I loved this way more than I did when I read it the first time. I read this book like back like 4 years ago, and I was just kind of very meh on it. Like, I didn't understand why people liked it, but upon rereading it, I think my, high school, early college days makes me get this book, makes me understand it a little bit more. It makes me appreciate it a little bit more. It was a guy named Charlie, and he's writing a letter to this anonymous person about his life, and that's kind of what it is, as Charlie kind of deals with high school stuff like that. Very good. I had forgotten all the plot points that happened in this reread, so it was still pretty surprising to me. I liked it way more the second time around. Okay, next I'm going to talk about a book that I am in between whether I want to give it a 3.75 or a 4, and that is A Princess in Theory by Alyssa. cool. This is an adult romance book that I saw on Scribd, and I thought, hey, that looks cute. I'm going to try that out. Follows a epidemiologist, and she is actually like the long lost betrothed of this African prince, and he goes to try to find her and stuff like that, and the story goes from there. It is very cute. It was definitely one of the better romances that I have read. I think that, you know, the character development was great. I thought the romance was cute. I thought that it was overall pretty solid. The things that I didn't like about it was, one, the audiobook I think was like 11 hours long, so it was pretty long for romance, and you definitely felt that drag, and I feel like it was trying to do a lot of different things, and despite it being so long, the ending was super rushed, which I like didn't really enjoy very much. And this is kind of weird. Another thing that I didn't like, or this is kind of hard to explain because I really liked it at first, but then as it continued on, I kind of got annoyed. Without spoiling anything, big reveal kind of thing that happens isn't just like brushed aside and like the girl doesn't like instantly like move on from kind of being lied to. She really makes the hero in this story like work for her forgiveness, which I did really enjoy up to a certain point, but I felt like that really dragged on. Like it was going on for forever. It felt really repetitive. Like they would like argue a lot, like it was the same argument over and over and over again. Overall, very solid romance. Like I said, yeah, great characters, great romance. I would have liked a little bit more steam, but it was still like moderately steamy. And yeah, next I have another book that I listened to on audiobook, which is a genre that I normally never go for, and that was The First Sister by Linda A. Lewis. And this is an adult sci-fi novel. And if you've been here for a while, I don't really read sci-fi. Sci-fi is not really my jam. But you know what, this book sounded really interesting, and so I decided to pick it up because it follows this pleasure woman, or like she's a part of like a religious group of pleasure women who take a vow and they do not speak, like they physically cannot speak, so that they can keep the secrets of everyone that they are sleeping with. So it follows like the highest ranking one on this certain ship. And then, as is the case with sci-fi, the first sister, which is what they call like the highest ranking pleasure woman on the ship, they are fighting like another group of people in space, and so we follow a guy that is on that other side, and then we follow another person, and that third person is actually non-binary, which I thought was so cool because it is an adult sci-fi that follows a non-binary main character, and I just thought that was super cool, and I thought that that was well done. I gave this book a 3.75. I can't remember whether I said that yet. Mostly because, one, sci-fi isn't totally my genre, so take this with a grain of salt. Like, I was really interested in this book, and I'm very glad that I read it, but like the concept in and of itself, not super thrilling, and also like the ending, like big reveal twist, didn't really sit right with me, and I can't really like come to terms with it. I will probably be reading the next book because I am interested to see what happens, but yeah, this is like was very out of my comfort zone. Glad I read it. Not the absolute best, but still a pretty solid read. And then next, wow, I like talked about all the physical books at the beginning, and now I'm talking about all the audiobooks. Next, I read another adult romance, and that is Work For It by Talia Hibbert. Talia Hibbert, what a queen. She is such a queen of romance. Like, she's quickly becoming like one of my favorite romance authors. Despite this being like a little bit lower rating. I mean, 3.75 is not a lower rating. But I went into this book and I had no idea that it was a male-male romance, but this is the first book in her male-male romance series, and so I didn't know that going in, but I was just like, hey, that's cool, okay, let's go. Talia Hibbert is able to make such like great characters in her romances that are all like tortured souls that are so sweet. Like, I don't know how to describe it. Very briefly, it takes place on like a farm thing, and it follows like a farmer type person and then this guy from the city who's trying to figure himself out, and so he like comes to stay on the farm. Yeah, it talks a lot about mental health and like these tortured, like I said, tortured men characters, and both of them kind of had their problems that they were dealing with, and yeah, they do start a relationship. This book is very, very steamy. I'm excited to read more from Talia Hibbert because everything that she makes, I just love the characters and I love the concepts. Like, what a queen. Like I said, queen of romance right here. Okay, and the last book that I read before I get into what I'm currently reading, and I actually lied, this is actually a 3 stars, but that is Emma by Jane Austen. I read this for one of my classes, and I normally really love Austen's works, but this one felt a little long. It felt a little bit like it dragged. I think mostly because I just had to read like this whole thing in like 3 weeks on top of like so many other assignments that I had, so I was like being tortured having to read so much of this in such a short amount of time, and I'm sure that's why I didn't enjoy it like as much. I've read Pride and Prejudice and I've also read Northanger Abbey, and I both gave those like I think 5 stars maybe. I loved both of those so much, but yeah, I think it was just because I was so pressured to read this so fast. Interested in reading more of Austen's works. clearly. I just love kind of the domestic high society setting. Okay, so those are all the books that I read in the month of November. Now I'm going to get into 2 books that I am currently reading. The first one is The Heart of Betrayal by Mary E. Pearson. This is the second book in the Kiss of Deception series. I'm finally reading the sequel and I'm so excited. I'm about 200 pages into it right now. I'm absolutely enjoying this book. There are just some things that are like super cringy to me and like there for no reason, but I'll talk about more in my wrap up. Maybe I'll end up loving the ending of this book, we'll see. And the second book that I'm reading is one that is totally out of my comfort zone in like 50 different ways, but I saw it on Scribd and I was like, everyone's been talking about this book, so maybe I'll give it a try, and that is Plain Bad Heroines by Emily M. Danforth. This is just, it feels so weird coming from me because it is so just out of my comfort zone. This is like a kind of soft horror book, even though it scares the shit out of me. This is another one that's really complicated because it's like a story within a story within a story, but basically it starts off with like the deaths of these 2 girls that are in a sapphic romance back in like the 1902-ish times, and they go to this school for girls, like the Brookhaus School for Girls, and then it kind of flashes forward to the present where they are making a movie out of what happened like back then. And y'all know I never read horror books, so this is just so out of my comfort zone in terms of that. Also, the horror aspects do have to do with bugs, specifically yellow jacket wasps. I hate bugs. Like, bugs are probably like my least favorite thing ever. Also, this book is like a 16-17 hour audiobook, which I really normally listen to like really short audiobooks. And so far, I think I have about 10 hours left, and I actually am pretty interested in this book. I think that it is really good. Talk about it more in my wrap up. I just wanted to let y'all know I was trying this one out. Okay, so there you have it, everyone. Those are all the books that I read in November, along with what I am currently reading. Thank you guys so much for watching. Let me know down below what your favorite book that you read this month was. Subscribe if you want to see more videos from me, and I will see you later in another video very soon. Bye!